Surely you remember a few weeks back when I saw the Czech Weapons CSV-9 for the first time at SHOT Show, or as I called it, the Czech-9. The CSV-9 just looks cool as shit. Like 2022 Jack Burton would be dual wielding them. And even if it doesn't appear to be practical at first glance, especially at a cost of $2,000, this gun's got some amazing tricks up its sleeve. Is this gun worth your cash or check? We'll investigate that today on TFBTV. So of course I see it at SHOT Show and I've got to get one. I have to get one. I thought it was way too neat. I'm a big PCC guy. Bit of an odd bird for a PCC. It's a Czech made 9mm that uses a mag in front of the grip style receiver arrangement, which was more popular with smaller PCCs, SMGs, so on in the 80s and earlier, like the TEC-9. The fist-to-fist reloading style of like the Uzi or the MAC-10 is typically preferable to the mag in front of the grip layout because not only is reloading more intuitive when you bring one hand to another, but having the mag in the grip further back also means you get a longer barrel in the same size or smaller package. On the other hand, if you've got the magazine in front of the grip like this, it's easier to use larger magazines like double stack, double feed magazines and have an ergonomic grip that isn't defined by the magazine. What I mean by that is the Uzi uses double stack, double feed magazines, but it's a bit like gripping a 2x4 in terms of ergos because the grip obviously has to be big enough to accommodate those mags. And yet another benefit of this mag forward configuration is that you can use ammunition or ammunition feeding devices that would be too large for like a pistol grip mag well. Take for example the Suomi mags and the drums used by the B&T KH-9, or you can also use the magazine well as a foregrip if you want to. But the trade-off is you don't have that hand finds hand reloading and you're going to have possibly a shorter barrel or a longer gun. The CSV-9 squanders some of the advantages of the mag forward configuration. It uses Glock magazines, which is totally awesome, right? Glock mags are cheap, they're reliable, you probably have a ton already. Your PCC and your pistol can use the same magazine. However, Glock mags are designed to work in a pistol grip, so they don't need a separate mag well like this, meaning that they'd be just fine in a grip mag well. The point I'm driving at is the CSV-9 could have just used Glock magazines in the grip and they wouldn't have really had to change much, but you would have probably had a longer barrel in the same size gun. Rightfully so, many of you are asking, why does this glorified TEC-9 cost $2,000? This little mystery of a gun checks some strange boxes that aren't common in this genre. So let's talk basic features and specs first before we dive into what makes this gun so different. Did I mention this gun's a bit of a mystery? I know a few of them apparently made it stateside, but I've never seen one until our boy Tim C from the Firearm blog showed me one he had in the way back. But there are no reviews I could find of it, at least not in English, no articles, nothing on this little Czech SMG. The best I could do was find these foreign interest pages that rattle off the CSV-9 specs and not much more than that. There's just not a lot of info out there on this gun, not even on Google Scholar. I couldn't find much, especially reviews. There are multiple versions of this gun, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I've got version 1, which is an extremely compact pistol SMG, which features an overall length of just 13 inches like this, a height of 6 inches, a barrel length of 5 inches. And from what I gather from Czech Weapons website about the CSV-9, there are aluminum and steel frame versions. If I understand their website correctly, the steel receiver version weighs a whopping 4.6 pounds empty, while the aluminum version is just 3 pounds. Not bad. So I just weighed it myself as I configured it with all the shit on it except for the flashlight, and it's almost exactly 5 pounds. I added a folding stock, a micro red dot, and a mount, and with all that in place, 5 pounds on the nose. That's heavier than my Flux Raider over here, but 1.5 pounds lighter than my beloved MP5K PDW, even though they have about the same barrel length. From front to back, it does come with a flash hider that looks almost exactly like an A2 birdcage from the AR-15, but unfortunately, while it does have a threaded barrel and you can take this flash hider off, it's in a metric pitch that even the importer, Four Peaks, doesn't know, and on top of that, the flash hider indexes into the upper a bit like how AK flash hiders or brakes index into the front sight block. That means that suppression isn't going to be easy. Now, the good news is that allegedly Czech Weapons is working on a 1/2x28 adapter for it for the United States. And also, as we'll talk about later, this is a fully modular gun that you should be able to change the barrel on yourself. So at least in the foreseeable future, someone could offer a 1/2x28 threaded barrel, or maybe you could even just send this one off and get it rethreaded. It's got this adorable little aluminum quad rail that has 4 pick rail segments at 12, 3, 6, and 9, along with a set of low profile and removable click adjustable sights that you see here. It's got a removable optics rail on top of the receiver, ambi controls including an ambi safety and a reversible charging handle. So even though God ignored the left-handers, at least Czech Weapons is thinking about them. And at the back, you've got an also removable pick rail stock attachment point like the SIG MPX or MCX. So any pick rail stock or brace, you're going to be able to mount it on here. Now, with the basics out of the way, let's identify the Czech-9's little secrets. First, this gun is striker fired, just like the Spectre M4 SMG or the B&T KH-9 I mentioned earlier, which means it's got a pretty decent trigger. Like most striker fired handguns, it's got a short take up and about a 5-pound wall. Then you get an audible and tactile reset. Listen for it. If you're good with striker-fired handgun triggers, then you'll probably be good with this one. Another one of my favorite features is something also seen in the Flux Raider, and that is that there is a designated area to accommodate an additional magazine. So it's neat. You get to stow an additional magazine in the grip, and there's this small, discrete magazine release button right here that you can use to deploy the magazine, and it makes mag changes a little bit quicker. It's kind of cool. Now, as I perused some of the European sites that have info about the CSV-9, I stumbled upon a website called Ammoterra, which said that the CSV-9, and I quote, is a real jigsaw puzzle designed for customers who like to change the design of their weapon. It continues, all you have to do is buy version 1 in the design that the customer currently wants and gradually buy additional accessories. He can then arbitrarily combine the forearm and stocks according to his current mood. Okay, so this is pretty bad English, but I get the gist of what they're trying to say. While I wouldn't suggest outfitting your firearms arbitrarily or based on your current mood, I mean, what the hell are we talking about here? Cell phone wallpapers? But essentially what they're saying is you could buy the CSV-9 in any version, and then you can swap uppers, stocks, handguards, barrels, whatever. With the other models, the possibilities are shown on Czech Firearm's website, where they have 6 different variants listed, and you can interchange parts between all of them. The version I'm reviewing today is the version 1, but the US model, which basically means no butt stock, because that would mean that the CSV-9 with a barrel shorter than 16 inches would be a short-barreled rifle, and it would need to be registered with the ATF, NFA branch, and blah, 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 blah. Fortunately, I bought a pistol brace, which makes this somehow a pistol and not a rifle at all. So you can change the gun according to your mood, right? Back to the English site. The page notes that the CSV-9, quote, was originally made as a weapon for personal protection and protection of health and property in version 1. I'm guessing version 2 is if you're sad and protecting your car. Version 3 is for being excited while protecting your dog. And version 4 is for protecting your place of business, perhaps when you're sleepy. Anyways, what myself and these Euro-English sites are trying to say is that perhaps the most innovative feature of this gun is its complete modularity, and I can't wait to see what 3D printers and home machinists are going to cook up for this thing. The barrel, handguard, upper receiver, the top cover, as I mentioned on the upper receiver, the barrel, and the back plate with the stock, they're all removable and interchangeable, meaning that you could theoretically delete all of the rail in this gun and have any scope mount you want, any stock mount you want, any handguard you want, any barrel length that you want, as long as you have the means of producing it or purchasing it. But let's not act like either of those options isn't tricky for a niche gun that's brand new to the US market. It isn't like you can just, I don't know, go in the backyard with your Dremel and manufacture a top cover for this thing. But you know, I'm still slightly aroused by the possibilities here. For example, I think a top cover built specifically for an Aimpoint Micro to just drop on there, or in a Trijicon RMR footprint, would be really freaking neat. And I wonder if Czech Weapons would ever make a receiver plate blank where a machinist in the United States could maybe customize them. That'd be kind of cool too, and I can't imagine that expensive. But none of that's available yet. To my knowledge, the only other version available from Four Peaks, the importer, is version 2, which is the exact same thing as version 1, just with an 8-inch barrel and a longer handguard with quad rail. As to the price, it is expensive, but this does appear to be a quality machine. Further, I found one for sale on the Austrian weapon market for 1,590 euro, which is 1,800 bucks. So what that kind of tells me is that even though this seems very expensive for a 9mm straight blowback, we aren't paying like a huge gringo tax just to get the CSV in the United States, and then they're buying these for like 700 bucks in Europe or anything. Let's take a break from the dry specs and features to discuss how I outfitted mine, because I'm pretty stoked about it and I'm very happy with the performance of the modifications that I chose. First thing, I added a brace, as I mentioned, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to form one this gun or not, or keep it as a brace, because it works great as is. I was disappointed that I couldn't find the Czech Weapons original stock, but I found something, in fact, better. I've never heard of A3 Industries, but after several hours of searching online for like a minimalist stock that would hook up to a Picatinny adapter, I found this 6-inch offset stock. It's a left-hand folder, and they call it modular because you can change the arm and then the brace or the stock butt plate. The offset is very, very important here because it actually clears the charging handle perfectly, if you see that. Almost like it was designed for the CSV-9, and it's very sturdy with an easy-to-use deployment mechanism that I like a lot. I got lucky here, I think, and I frankly couldn't be any happier. I can even manipulate the charging handle with the stock in place, albeit a little bit awkwardly. I mean, it looks good, it works well, it seems pretty robust. You can fire and charge it with the stock folded. I mean, I think this is better than the factory option. Secondly, as a righty, I changed the charging handle from the right side to the left side, which allows me to charge the gun with my support hand after a reload instead of having to do like the AK reach around. And I know AK guys love reach arounds, so if you like it that way, you don't have to swap it. But I have a left folding stock. I also prefer to have my flashlight on the left because that's where my support thumb's going to be. There's no sense in putting like another prominence here on the right hand side that's going to increase the overall width of the gun. So it just made a lot of sense for it to be on the left hand side, especially considering the fact that it works with the brace that I've got on here and how everything else is configured. While we're on flashlights, I use the Surefire X300B, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite lights because I can use it for a pistol or a rifle and I can easily just swap them without having to commit to too much in terms of mounting and wiring, you know, and like removing M-lock screws and shit like that. Yeah, it's kind of a cheap, lazy move, I admit it, but this thing throws some good light and it works really well. Finally, the last thing I did was I added an optic. I got a ScalarWorks optic mount with an RMR footprint to try out the new Ameriglow Haven. The Haven looks pretty good. Ameriglow is like Trijicon's budget line. MSRP is, I think, 389 bucks on this, so I wouldn't be surprised if these were in the low $300 or high $200 range. It seems like it's built pretty tough, and it does have a side-mounted battery drawer, meaning you don't have to take it off the mount to change the battery. Battery life's okay, 1 year constant on at a brightness level of 4. My main issue with it is that I can definitely tell the refresh rate is a little slow because I can see the reticle flickering whenever I transition from target to target. It's a little distracting, kind of like the Hex Wasp that I tried out last year, but you know, it still works just fine. So how did this gun perform on the range? I think it goes without saying that 9mm pistol caliber carbines, especially tiny ones like this, are about as much fun as you can have on a range without full auto. Performance of the TEC-9 was exactly what you would expect for a high-end straight blowback 9mm pistol caliber carbine. The striker-fired trigger was a nice touch, and it makes the trigger pull better than other traditional pistol caliber carbines, including more expensive options like my beloved H&K MP5, which I have 3 of. We didn't shoot it for groups or anything, but accuracy anywhere between 25 to 75 yards was good enough that we were regularly hitting a Caldwell 6-inch steel plate at that distance.
Yeah, right to the left.
Shit.
I mean, I think it's close enough.
So we're zeroing the CSV-9. We've got a little 6-inch plate. I'm just freestanding at 50 yards, and we just clank, 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 clank. Nailed them. This thing actually shoots pretty well. Certainly the better than average trigger helped. Recoil was manageable because of the weight of the gun, but it felt a little bit snappier than non-blowback guns like the MP5 or the MPX. This stands to reason because there's no mechanical delay system, which means that the recoil is coming straight back with the bolt. Simple as. That said, recoil was hardly an issue, as you might imagine, for a 5-pound all-metal 9mm. You do have to be mindful of this reciprocating charging handle, as I did get popped once in the face by it while performing strong side to other strong side transitions. And I also got a little bit of recoil on the nose if I wasn't attentive of it. But that isn't an issue with the gun so much as it is with the fact that I selected a very small 6-inch folding stock that has a hinge right where my nose is. We had no malfunctions whatsoever with hundreds and hundreds of rounds of 9mm, including these crazy plus P screwdriver tip style rounds. So the guys at Ventura Munitions asked me to plug this stuff. It's blue line, like this plus P plus. 90 grain, super light, but it's using these Lehigh 100% copper, the screwdriver heads, as I call them. What's crazy about this, you pick it up. This is probably, this box of 20 rounds, it feels like it's lighter than like 5 rounds of normal 9mm because it uses some weird 2-piece case. But we're gonna give it a shot in the CSV-9, see how it does. Actually, to walk that back, the only malfunction I did have was induced by, again, a right to left transition where my hand accidentally got in the way of the charging handle when I was firing. So we got a little stovepipe. Now this was my fault. Again, you're dealing with a reciprocating charging handle. So I transitioned to my left-hand side and I did a terribly awkward job of it. And whenever I did that, I impeded the rearward travel of the charging handle. So that's my bad. So far we've got hundreds of rounds through this thing today, and we haven't, that's the first mishap we had, and it was caused by me. I'm not a huge fan of the safety. It's that less common type where middle is safe and not middle is fire. I mean, that makes it ambidextrous. I don't hate it. I just wish I had a little bit more of a positive detent on this thing. You hear it clicking, but it's pretty easy. It's too easy, I think, to move in and out of safe. Before I get further into negatives, I have to say that I have virtually no complaints about the performance of the CSV-9 or the build quality. This was an absolute blast on the range, and it seems like it's pretty well made. So negatives. Glock magazine compatibility is of course awesome, but to say that this gun takes Glock magazines is like saying that I watch television. This gun only takes Gen 4 Glock magazines with the Ambi magazine cutout, and I only watch true crime documentaries involving murder and The Witcher. Now, I did try some Gen 2 and some Gen 3 magazines in the Magwell. Not only are they really hard to get in there because I guess they're slightly fatter and you've got to really cram them in there, unlubricated, raw dog. Hard to get in. They don't drop free, and then on top of that, they don't have the Ambi mag cutout, so there's nothing holding them in place. You have to use the Gen 4 magazines, and even those, as you see here, don't drop free all of the time. It just depends on the mag. Another negative, disassembly and maintenance, a little bit tricky. To begin the disassembly process, you actually press this little button back here, very small button at the back of the receiver, a little bit like the first step on disassembling an AK. However, instead of popping off the top cover, you rotate the stock, which then comes off. The receiver top cover will slide off, and when you do that, you can tell that this is a gun that uses some precision engineering because the top cover dovetails perfectly into the upper receiver to the point that it looks monolithic on here right now, even though it isn't. Now, getting out the recoil spring and the buffer is easy enough, but when you remove the striker and the striker spring, that can be a little bit tricky, and it's very easy to put that in, that assembly, upside down, which you wouldn't think to, but you have to closely look at the manual. Speaking of the manual, it was GD infuriating. As a side note, I would strongly recommend to Four Peaks that you guys consider a disassembly and assembly manual made from scratch, because the manual I used was, again, just pure, unadulterated English and extremely difficult to understand, like talking to my dry cleaner. It was clearly like someone took the Czech manual, plugged it into a drunk version of Google Translate, and then printed out the results. It's not very helpful, and even the pictures are super small. Finally, the issue of price. $1,000 MSRP could be a little bit steep for a straight blowback. Again, it's cheaper than an H&K MP5, but this isn't an H&K MP5. There are already high-quality blowback PCCs out there charging more than $2,000. One company in particular, which is doing very well. So well, in fact, that B&T, the company I'm talking about, just landed the first SMG contract for the U.S. military since the grease gun in World War II, and B&T is more expensive than the CSV-9. It seems like CSV-9 knows the target audience that it's catering to, people who would buy a B&T, and it seems like the importer, Four Peaks, has wisely MSRP'd the CSV-9 at about 20% less than the B&T APC-9 series, which MSRP for over $2,500. I don't have an APC-9 yet, but the APC, with the ability to not only take Glock mags, but tons of accessories that are already out there, is a great alternative to the CSV-9. But on the other hand, you do save $500 on the CSV-9, which makes it very competitive, and it's all metal, which is a big deal to some shooters. Finally, the modularity is, of course, a really cool feature, but that doesn't get you much until we've got more parts, accessories, and conversion kits here stateside. I'm going to go ahead and answer that question with a question. Is it worth $2,000? Well, do you think the MP5 is worth $3,000? Do you think the SPC-9 is worth $2,500? If you said yes, you'd probably love the CSV-9, especially if and when parts start to show up for it. Honestly, I'd rather pay the $2,000 MSRP for this over $849 MSRP for the CZ Scorpion Evo, but that's just me. If you're watching this channel, you're probably here because you tend to favor the pricier stuff that I also tend to favor. That's about half of you. The other half of you bitch about anything that costs more than $400, so you're pooping your pants right now. I know I like to dab on the pores from time to time, but honestly, and I mean this, guys, I love all of you, and I'm very appreciative that you're watching. I'm also very appreciative of Ventura Munitions and Top Gun Supply, your online shooting sports superstore. You want to win a free gun? Get on Patreon or Subscribestar. Sign up at the $5 or the $10 level, and you're automatically entered to win a free gun from Top Gun Supply every month. But once again, I have to say thank you so much for watching. We do it for you because we love you. Take care.